Hey guys, it's Friday, so this is a favorite day of the week for me because I get to really talk to Mananulo, Royce Ramos, um, up at Nomad Collie Combat and Fitness Center up in the Palisades Mall, West Merrick, New York. Royce and I have been training together for I don't know, a little over a year or so. In that time, I have learned an enormous amount in the art of collie, particularly in Paquiti Tertia, and I'm really enjoying this journey with my instructor Royce. How are you today, brother?
Doing it right, sir. Just sharing this link right now.
So we talked earlier in the week, Royce, and we both agree. You can go on YouTube and you'll see a plethora of differing self-defense YouTube videos. And also we can see, well, first of all, let's talk about the difference between martial arts, fighting sports, and self-defense and how they interact, but how they're still separate.
Yeah, so, well, fighting and self-defense, honestly, if you look at it, they fall under martial arts.
Mm-hmm.
They're components of martial arts. They're not necessarily martial arts,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm not going to go to the martial arts of learning how to kick someone's ass or butt, whatever. Like, bleep that out if you want.
You could say ass. Sorry.
Yeah, ass is a donkey, right? So, and I'm not going to go to the school of self-defense. The school should be teaching you your personal protection, self-defense, and awareness. And school should be teaching you how to fight. That's the cold hard reality of martial arts. Martial. Keyword martial. Mars, god of war. It's about fighting, which the reality is. The martial arts are we call it martial arts and martial sciences because there is a fine line between the two that it should be that encompassing.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain level of aesthetics and beliefs to the point where it can kind of be cult-like, right? But there's a certain it's a very religious approach. It's in a sense the school or dojo is like a church. You go there, you train hard, you pay your respects, blood, sweat, and tears. And sometimes you're kind of praying to God, like, oh my God, I'm dying here, right? So this is something we do religiously on a regular basis. This is meditation to me. This is prayer to me. This is training self-defense to me. It's learning how to fight for me. So, fighting and martial arts are fighting and self-defense are part of martial arts. Combat sports, again, is a component of martial arts because there have been in God knows for how long, at a certain point in time, when culture became more dignified, more respectful of each other to some degree. And respectful doesn't mean we respect each other, but you can acknowledge the other's capability that they'll have things that are of a competition level. Sometimes tribes would set up some kind of competition where that way it can limit death and destruction on both sides, right? Native Americans did it. The whole point of the Olympics was because of that. In the spirit of unity, whatever you want to call it. There's so many things, but again, an aspect. You're learning science, aesthetics, and scientific approaches to how to fight, but with rules and regulations.
So what I see, and to me, it's all good. Whether it's BJJ, whether it's Kali, whether it's boxing, whether it's Muay Thai. There's so many different ways we can go with this. And one of the newer, or at least to me anyway, thoughts is this combatives, which is like Lee Morrison's really one of the better men to follow with combatives, and there's Jeff Thompson. They're both British guys, and even Mick Coop. But their thought is, we're going to teach you practical things that you would utilize to protect yourself if attacked or if put in a vulnerable position, whether it's attacked with hands or with a blunt or an edged weapon. And what I do notice, and again, it's all good. What I do notice is that I do see when they're showing what they're calling not a martial art, there's actually a martial art component to it. They and that's great. I mean, that's really, to me, and you and I were discussing this the other day, what survival skills really are. The first thing is to have threat recognition, to understand there's a threat, and then have an immediate response to that threat. And it should be, to master that, it should be an unconscious competence level where you just react. You've done it, evolution after evolution after evolution. And that you just perform that. And the whole goal, from everything I've studied and read in survival skills, is to have to recognize the threat and to eliminate the threat as fast as you can with the least amount of energy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, and survival skills that covers such a broad range alone that.
Sorry, do you know where Zills is?
That way, I don't know. Sorry,
It's okay.
Probation booth. Whatever.
So everybody knows the school is based in a mall, and people, for whatever reason, always wandering in looking for directions where the men's room is, ladies' room, and do you have masks for sale? Dude, we're in a combat fighting school.
Well,
but anyway.
you look in and there's like 15 people not wearing masks. You have masks here?
But anyhow, so let's get back to the whole thought of really learn a lot, use a little, and and then recognize that threat and have an immediate response to it.
Right, and and what I'm saying is that depending on what type of survival skills, right? There is, and now again, survival skills can employ martial arts. There's a lot of aspects of martial arts that people don't realize that go far beyond the fighting concepts. You have to understanding things from, knowing your situation, who and what's around you. So that's why survival skills and martial arts are usually hand in hand. Now, people look at your traditional dojo that we know of in the United States. I have to lay that out, and specifically that we know of in the United States about certain aspects of those martial arts, which are usually, your low blocks and, your blocks, and you're doing all your blocks, you're punching, your horse stance, you do your forms, all right, your kicks, whatever the situation may be. But again, just components, right? Oh, you learn to turn around like this, boom, 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 right? But without the problem is they don't tell you that. That's because they're teaching you how to deal with how to move, creating that chain in your body to move in regards to multiple opponents, or one opponent moving around you. Boxing, right? So, same thing. It should also be telling you that in my peripheral, as I turn, I should be able to see what's around me, depending on which way I turn. Right? 180 degrees, 270, 360. Right? I should be able to see with minimal effort scanning without having to be like, what's that? Right? And then going beyond that, what we learn in things such as urban survival and such, how to utilize reflective surfaces, how to position yourself, how to make sure you're in a key area, certain level of strategy. But traditional martial arts, like let's say in Japan, where they played, where as you go, and in the old school there was no television or smartphones or whatever, you can play gomoku, or chess or some variation of the strategy of a game to develop the mind beyond the physical. So that's how we did it back then, of course. You had to do it. Now it's like,
Yeah, I think the important concept here, the important concept is that in the real world, in real world application, you use what you've learned in a martial art, but you use an attribute of that. So what do I mean by that? If on the street somebody was to reach out and throw a right hand at me, I'm not going to roll under, come back with a 2-3 and set up a jab. I'm just going to throw a check hook and look to eliminate them right away. So I have an immediate response to that threat. And if anybody doesn't know what a check hook is, go watch the weigh-in between Canelo and Caleb Plant. Plant reached in and grabbed him, and Canelo just stepped off and threw a check hook and cut him open. So, but anyhow, the point of it is that, boxing is that's my fallback because I've been doing it for so long, for decades, literally. But on the street, again, if somebody comes over with a big wide right hand at me, I'm just going to throw a check hook. And if he's still up, I'm going to slam him with a right hand. I'm not looking to take him into the third or fourth or fifth round. It's a totally different mindset.
It's as quickly as possible.
Yeah, eliminate the threat as quickly as possible, and we can get into that in another time about target area and things of that nature to make
Right.
to eliminate again the amount of energy you have to expend to eliminate that threat, because there may be multiple attackers. You can't unload all your energy on one attacker. It might be a guy coming this way or that way, or whatever the case may be.
Right. And it's funny, there's always been an argument, what, the traditional martial arts work and yada yada. And some people don't understand it because some people they want to do something, they want like immediate gratification and immediate sensationalism. But you who've done the sweet science of boxing for decades understand that you're gonna spend time going over footwork, you're doing your boxing cross, you're gonna do your jabs, right? Jab. You're gonna do your 1-2s. You're gonna do 1-2 slip. You're gonna do all the things hook, bob and weave, and do all your techniques over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, right? Hit the bag, don't hit the bag, hit some pads, don't hit the pads, hit something, hit a pull noodle, I don't care. But you're gonna develop all that technique over time, right? Right? But the reality is, in the streets, when you're in a situation, right, what's good with that is that it teaches you how to do something really fast. But you still have to do it over and over and over and over again until it becomes ingrained. Traditional martial arts is very much the same way, right? We're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. We're going to do this, and then we do this, and do this, and then do this. But this motion here, all this will happen, right? You're not going to go into a fight, into a pop, and then pop. Well, but the reality is, you're like, yo, I want no problems, and then something comes up. All it is you're checking it and you're throwing your punch. Same thing. Well, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this.
Well, that's exactly right. So, like, we go back to the scenario where somebody on the street is throwing a big right hand at me, and I'm going to spin off and throw a check hook. Well, I have the ability to do that without expending a lot of energy because I've done it for so many years in the gym, whether it's with pad work or on the bag or sparring. I mean, nothing replaces sparring for real life feel. Again, it's not the same. You got a time commitment. You have rules you have to follow. There's no rules on the street. If I want to eye gouge, if I want to elbow you to the face or rip out your throat, that's all cool. But the thing is, the reason I think sparring is so critically important to self-protection is because violence never repeats the same pattern. It's always going to be something different. And when you're sparring, you're going to see different looks. You're going to see different angles. And I think it trains your brain more than in your body to react to certain stimulus. So again, if that right hand's coming at me, which would be an angle 1 in martial arts, I'm going to step off. We call it stepping off. In Kali, it's the female V. It's a 45-degree angle. I'm going to step off to the side, and I'm going to do something nasty. So, the the point I'm trying to make is that ability to throw that check hook, or that ability to step off and then maybe take my boxing footwork with some of the collie I've learned and throw an elbow to the guy's face, or maybe the little bit of grappling I've done. I mean, I wrestled in high school, but that was decades ago. But the little bit of exposure I've had to BJJ from my friends Jay Gawk and Gareth and all those guys, maybe I step off and do something.
We never know what the situation is going to be. That's why sparring is so important. You can't be one. You should never be in martial arts school that doesn't spar. I don't care who you are.
I agree 100%.
No disrespect. You're doing your students a disservice if you do not spar. Period.
I can't tell you how many times, Royce, I've had people in my gym or gyms I've worked in that didn't want to spar, but they were just absolute champions on the bag. They're whacking that bag, they're moving around and putting combinations together and all this kind of stuff. And then we finally get them to spar, and they're totally lost. They're totally lost because they've never been exposed to real fire, so to speak. And
they're a hero in their own mind.
Pardon?
They're a hero in their own mind.
Well, it's a little bit of ego, but I think it's also the fact that the bag doesn't punch back.
Yeah, it's fear.
So,
ego and fear go hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah. And I've seen many egos humbled in the boxing ring. And it's.
I've been doing martial arts for 40 out of 45 years. I'm gonna get hit.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm gonna get hit. Probably gonna get hurt.
And I don't want to get too far off the topic, but it's part of the topic. I mean, and there's controlled sparring too. Yeah. And sparring, in my mind, should always be controlled. Even when we have professionals that are sparring over the years, my partner Joe Greer, if it got a little too hot and heavy and it was being stupid, he'd stop it and say, "Guys, hey, look, we're here to work. We're here to work on it." And so that's the other end of the spectrum. But if you have people that are quality people, whether it's in boxing or collie, that are going to what we call work, no one's going to take advantage of anybody, or shouldn't take advantage of anybody.
The reality is, and even if you don't want to have a situation where it's going to be a hard situation in your school, control it, keep it under control, work on technical aspects. Even that little bit of technical training is important. You'll never train them how to deal with pressure when time comes. You're gonna, especially if you're a school that, look, if you want to give a kid a black belt who's less than 14 years old within 2 to 3 years, 4 years even, all right, that's a prerogative. I just pray that you're teaching them how to spar, and I just pray that you're giving them more than an hour of class every day. Because it's not fair to them, not fair to their parents if they're a kid, not fair to you as an instructor, because you're just giving yourself a bad name.
Yeah, and as far as the sparring, I've seen it. So when we talk about sparring, people have to accumulate a level of experience in the gym, and I've had many times over the years where people wanted to spar one of my fighters, whether they're an amateur fighter of one of mine. And I'd say, listen, your guy's been in the gym like 6 months. Oh, no, he's ready. And they're not ready. So that's part of it too, where like you're talking about these junior black belts. They may have their technique and understanding of it all, but at the end of the day, they're not really ready for that level of.
Yeah, I never understood it because wrap them up in bubble wrap and let them go. It's all good. I did take when I was little. I had that freaking stiff pad. You could barely move, but you could take shots without feeling a lot of pain or any pain. Actually, you just but it teaches the kid how to deal with their pressure and how to move forward and back, how to deal with your situations. Okay, the reality is, and then hopefully when they get older, all right, when we get older, we can be able to move and spar without protective gear or limited protective gear. So and go beyond that. One of the aspects, and not to digress, but one of the aspects I love about FMA is when we utilize those stick drills. People are like, well, why you never carry a stick? But you got to understand that you deal with I'm gonna, you guys in the camera, right? This is, you see this coming at you on a regular basis, and you know you're eventually gonna start doing this, and you're gonna eventually
Right.
be like, you're gonna eventually do this, because you're gonna, whether inherently or proactively, you're gonna automatically adjust your mindset to deal with this coming at you. Even if you're attacking and defending, for anyone who's ever done this in the first time, for the very first time, knows that this is kind of
A little scary.
you know.
Well, and again, that gets to that mastery or that unconscious competence where again, boxing. So I've seen a bazillion jabs. When a jab comes at me, I'm either going to slip it or I'm going to catch it or I'm going to parry it. But I don't think through it. It's not my cognitive part of the brain. It's the wild brain. It's a unconscious competence. And to reach that level takes a lot of time on your technique and then a lot of time sparring because you're going to eat punches. That's how you learn to slip. And that's where, you have to have an environment where you can work, where guys aren't going to look to take each other out.
It's got to be conducive to that growth, and that's eventually going to lead to survivability in
Right.
life.
So I think you can reach a certain level where, like let's look at knife defense. And there's a lot of stuff on YouTube. There's a famous guy out there saying all knife defense is crap. It's bull crap. So, and he's entitled to that opinion. On a certain level, I agree. There is no self-defense. It's a bad day. Somebody pulls a knife on you, it is a bad day. You're probably going to get cut. You're going to get cut. You may even get, really cut bad. But the key is to try and live. Right. So it's a different, so let's talk about Kali in particular. So you've been teaching me Sabayan. And Sabayan is a flow drill, but it's teaching me attributes. And maybe you can explain. So to me, the Sabayan drill, which is it's a partner drill, you each have a knife, and you're catching and countering is a terminology I would use in boxing. Like when I catch a hook, I return a hook. If I slip a right hand, so it's the same concept. You're catching and countering. But explain to us why that's so important, how that gives you an attribute in a real world application.
Well, all right, so what I'm doing, right? So, training knife, right? So don't hurt myself or hurt my imaginary partner right now, right? So you're dealing. Most people drill the 3-part. Right? So, right, this is what I call the zero platform. It's the foundation of it, which later on leads to other techniques throughout the game. And it's designed to teach you certain aspects. One is designed to get your body to move and account for striking. Some people have seen there's a lot of videos of Sabayan out there from right two Hans and putting that information out there. You don't need me to rehash it too much, but I'll give my shout outs to the people who deserve it. To one Jared Mohongi, to one Romel Tortel, to one Apollo Ladra, and of course Grant Tuan himself, who brought it down to everybody. Right? They're great people to learn from. I have no problem with anyone for the most part. Other people apparently have a problem with me. Whatever, it is what it is. But you want to understand the mechanics. You understand this drill, then you're going to drill it out and flow it out. Then eventually you want to deconstruct it, right? So let's deconstruct it, because you start off with a thrust, you catch, like you're talking about. This is like someone striking you, and then you catch. You have this in boxing, right? Jab and catch, jab and catch, jab and catch, right? Why do that? Because when you strike, this is like you're parrying and offlining, right? Right?
It's developing an attribute. Yeah.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? That's normal. You see in boxing, right?
Yeah.
So you end up catching or parrying with big glove. You're not catching anything, but you're going to parry or block it, right? I thought there's no blocking boxing, right? Right? You're gonna block it. You're gonna slip. You're gonna block and slip, parry and slip, catch and slip. Same thing. So you understand these motions. Sabayan's, but that's one component. Sabayan means at the same time or simultaneously.
Right.
But that's designed to show you the aspect of when someone's thrusting at you, based on a low line thrust, you're gonna hack with your offhand, and you're gonna parry. Someone's sending a line of attack towards my center, I'm not going to just do this and hope I succeed. I want,
Yeah.
right? I want to get out of the way, right? First rule of thumb of self-defense is
Avoid.
Don't be there is if you can't avoid a situation because of you made a bad decision to go down the wrong alley or whatever the reason because you should have known better. Next action, don't be there is get out the way, right? So we're going to move out of the way. So Bayern was designed that if I'm going to not just do that, I'm going to counter strike. So I counter strike my thrust, my strike.
See, now that what you're showing there, Guru, is a check hook. Somebody's throwing a right hand, you're coming back with a check hook. Or someone's throwing a jab, you're catching, but you're returning at the same time. So you're not catching and then jabbing, you're timing his jab. As soon as he throws the jab, bang, you're catching his jab and you're returning jab. So it's the same concept. And again, that gets back to, in my mind, having an unconscious confidence level of seeing that stimulus thousands of times and having a direct, immediate response that doesn't require a lot of energy. And what's really important, that if no one's ever sparred, whether it's boxing or wrestling, you're going to roll. If you've never done it, the first time you do it, say you're going to do a 3-minute round of boxing, even shadow boxing, if you've never done it, 3 minutes seems like an entirety.
Oh, yeah. Especially
because it's a new stimulus to you. So when you have punches being thrown at you, again, it gets back to that guy that always goes to the gym and just hits the bags and never spars. The first time he spars, I guarantee he's going to run out of gas in about a minute because he's going to be all amped up and all jacked up, and it's a totally different environment. And
to go with what you're saying, beyond that, whether it's boxing, karate, Brazilian jiu-jitsu, right? Whatever the situation is, there will always be the components of a defense and counterattack at the same time, right? And those modalities are achieved by tremendous repetition in your methodology, correct?
Yeah. So the thing that I noticed right away when you're showing me, say, knife defense in particular, is so I learned a whole bunch of different attributes, but the reality is we've done drills where maybe I go in with a low line attack with my blade, which is the most, probably 90% of a knife attack is a low line sewing machine, and yeah, that motion there. And you'll just hack it, but at the same time you're hacking, you're stabbing me back in the throat, whether it's with a blade or with your fingers. So it's just snap. It's an immediate response. You don't even think about it. And that's, I think, where we start to separate the martial art and the self-preservation, where we don't separate it, but we take the martial art attribute that we learned and we apply it to a self-preservation context.
Right. I like to call it aggressive self-preservation.
Well,
but
and again, just so I can say this on that point, the guys that are really big into combatives, whether it's Tim Larkin out in Vegas, whether it's Jeff Thompson in Great Britain or Lee Morrison in Great Britain, Mick, they all believe, and so do I, preemptive strikes. Preemptive strikes, especially in an anti-social violence situation where your life or your loved one's life are on the line. If you read the threat, legally, you have the right to be preemptive.
Yes.
So you better lawyer up, but it'll be pretty easy to prove in today's world where everybody's videotaping, everybody's got a camera out, not videotape, that's an old word. Everybody's recording it on their phone. But even aside from that, we all know what we can ascertain what a real threat and not a real threat is.
Absolutely.
When it's a total stranger and they're coming after you aggressively, be preemptive. And that's where, I gave this talk last week. You have to be able to read people's body posture. When they're blading, then it's on. The moment they blade, whack them. Don't give them a chance to come at you. We're getting off topic here a little bit, but it kind of is to what we're talking about.
It's still within that realm. Now,
yeah.
On a side note, for people who love Sabayan and they see it and this looks really cool flow, just understand that there's more than just a low line strike.
Right.
There's going to be low line inside, high line, going to the outside. So be aware of that when those drills come out. It's going to be a game changer, guys. Good stuff.
But I think it's really, our topic today really is, martial arts or martial arts, fighting sports or fighting sports, and then self-preservation. But the self-preservation part, as much as we want to say, probably 90% of it is situational awareness and understanding threat recognition. But there's still that 10% chance you're going to have to fight in some manner.
Yes.
Whether it's an empty hand fight, or if that bad dude has a blade or an edged weapon or a blunt object,
your fight or flight response is gonna be heightened to such a degree. You're gonna feel it. You're gonna see it. Don't ignore it. That's my
that's actually
don't ignore it.
That's a cut and dry thing. When you're ambushed, your heart rate will probably immediately go to 145 beats per minute, somewhere around there.
Yeah.
It may raise up to 175. Between 145 and 175 beats, we lose complex motor skills. What is a complex motor skill? A complex motor skill is a quarterback dropping back. He's reading defenses. He's picking out a receiver. Then he has to perform a physical task. That is a complex motor skill. If your heart rate is above 145, it's not going to happen. That window, 145 to 175, are gross motor skills, where it's just a punch and a pull. Let's say that's it. And that has to be rehearsed and replicated literally thousands of times. So it becomes that unconscious competence where you just do it. You see the threat, you react, and you're gone.
That's why
you don't have time to use your frontal cortex and read the defense and look for another receiver because it's coming right for you. So
that's
to your point,
that's also because of that. It's also why I like doing a lot of high intensity interval training. Just got to get that heart rate up and
so that's why really the situational inoculation training, where you're going to run drills on one person, multiple drills, really quick, that they're not used to. You may have a knife attack. You may have somebody coming at you with a bat. You may have somebody coming out of your hands, and you run it like 5, 6, 7, 8 evolutions in a row. And then the student begins to have less of that increased heart rate or that adrenaline dump and that whole neurochemical bath that we get when we're ambushed. It's human nature. But what we need to think of, and I think this is a great way to look at it. If I have a candle here and I put my hand over, my hand's going to pull back. We call that a conditioned response. I don't think about it. I don't think, well, that hurts. I got to move my hand away. As soon as it touches it, I pull my hand back. That's what we call a conditioned response. And that's the level we want to maintain or reach. So when I see a right hand coming, I have a conditioned response. That's the candle. I just throw a check hook. Conditioned response. And I think that situational inoculation training is so important in teaching self-preservation skills, because you feel how those conditioned responses work or don't work. And you also get a sense of how difficult it is to really use the frontal cortex of your brain. You don't have time to reason. I told you this, like in the wild, animals have only a wild brain. They don't have an executive thinking. So an antelope is not going to be sitting there in the Serengeti desert, look up and see a pack of lions and think, well, they might be good dudes. I don't know.
Exactly.
He gets up and he just goes,
Yeah. And speaking of which, sometimes you gotta make that decision yourself too. You see something's happening, you know what? You don't wait to see what happens. You don't try to be like a tough guy, especially if you're already gonna be in a situation where you're outnumbered,
Right. Well, there is no, in the real world, there is no tough guy, because tell you a real quick story. Tim Larkin, who wrote a book, When Violence is the Answer. It's a really good book. It's an easy read. I read it in one night. he's out in Vegas. He's an ex-Navy intelligence guy. He's an ex-law enforcement guy. He's got multiple black belts, and I think he's a karate guy. It doesn't matter, but he's an accomplished martial artist, and he is of the his school is set up. He teaches general public, LEO, military, and his thing is like what we're talking about, taking attributes and applying them in a condition response method. So he gave a corporate speech on a cruise. It was a corporate cruise, and one of the dads, one of the people attending this corporate cruise seminar, took his 15-year-old daughter, and she was reluctant. She's like, "Dad, I don't want to go to this. I just want to sit by the pool. I really don't want to do this." Well, she ended up going anyhow, under duress, and probably 5 or 6 years later, Tim Larkin was doing a seminar at the corporate location, a different corporation. And after he got done with his presentation, a girl approached him, a young lady, and said, "Hey, do you remember me?" And he said, "No, I'm really sorry. I meet a lot of people, but tell me your story." She said, "Well, I was on a cruise, and I was 15 years old with my dad, corporate cruise, and he dragged me along. I really didn't want to go to your seminar, but something must have stuck in my head, because of 4 or 5, 6 years later, I'm in college. And every Saturday night, my roommate would stay by her boyfriend, so I was home alone in my dorm. And somebody came through the window. Now, this girl weighed 108 pounds. She was a little thing. And the guy who came through the window was, I think, 6'3", like 230 pounds. Big, big man. He had been doing what we call pattern of life. He had been squatting on her long enough to know that every Saturday night, her girlfriend was gone and she was alone. So he came through the window, and he went to attack and rape her. And for those that don't know, when men rape a woman, they have to get through barriers. Generally speaking, the barriers are clothing. Well, in this case, there were 2 barriers. He had pulled down the sheets, and then he also had to try to get her clothes off. As he did that, all she could remember from the seminar was latch on with her arm, hold on for dear life, and eye gouge. For whatever reason, she remembered this. And she did. She clamped on with a death grip with her arm and eye gouged. And with that, he stood up, Royce, and fell backwards. And she was still attached to him. When they landed, she broke his neck and killed him. So this is an important story, because you'll get women and men say, "Listen, I'm a little guy. I'm a little woman. What am I going to do up against somebody 230 pounds?"
Yeah.
There's a prime example of what you can do.
Right. Well, here's the thing, right? So I've been dealing with people walk by this place and want to know what's going on. Do we teach self-defense? Yes, martial arts is self-defense. Well, and sometimes I try to explain to them, right? Because like they want, again, that satisfaction to learn something and keep it. But that young lady is a unique situation where she remembered something because it flashed in a very. It's crazy, in a life-threatening situation when you recall things of your past. That happens to be one of the things that she recalls. God bless it. Good for her. But the reality is, 89 out of 90, I would say, will ever remember anything they're taught unless they rep it out. And the beauty
Absolutely.
facility to help that out. So, again, based on the methodologies of the instructors and the facility, right? I explained to them that, look, I'm like, you're taller than me. You're more built than me. Whatever. I'm only 5'2" on a good day with shoes, right? So I am not a big person. I am not. So, crying out loud, I graduated high school at 94 pounds and not even 5 feet tall. Okay? But that's my nature. That is being Filipino, being born here. My generation didn't get all the nifty steroids that are in the foods that are nowadays. Things like that. So I have to know what I have to learn and adapt whatever I know to suit the needs. I am not going to fight someone 6 foot, 200 pounds, right? Whether they're lean muscle or not, and be like, I'm gonna have a fair physical fight and not
No.
hit them anywhere that doesn't hurt. You know, I'm not gonna pound away at their chest and get bowled over. I'm going for everything that they tell you not to do in sport,
Right. Exactly.
combat sport,
Exactly. Yeah.
right?
Force multiplier.
You know, you don't. All right, yellow card for groin hitting, right? You're not supposed to hit the groin, right? You're not supposed
Yeah.
to gouge. Yellow
So,
warning.
you know, and I'm not a spokesperson for Tim Larkin. This is just something else that he says, and I agree with him. If you want to learn what blows and what strikes and what target areas that are going to keep you safe on the street, go to the UFC rulebook and look at I think there's 37 things you are not allowed to do. Learn how to do those things, and you'll be safe. You know, no eye gouging and elbow to the throat and all those things you can't do. Learn how to do those things because it's not a sport.
Because I'll tell you now, everybody watching this, that I am the first person you'll see that if someone tries to do something to me, I do not do center mass.
No,
Right?
you got a big rib cage here.
Right. Train small, hit small, right?
Yeah.
My goal is going for targets.
Well,
Remember,
eyes.
if they can groin, knee joints, elbow joints, ancillary, whatever it is, right? So, like, I get gruesome with I get gruesome with the guys, right? I tell them like really, really like like horror movie level brutality, right? For a reason. If I can think of it, so can the bad guy, right? So can your opponent, right? So I tell them if what I've told you sounds gruesome to you, imagine 10 times worse, and that's what you're dealing with. I get straight up rated R, gory, maybe rated for mature audience kind of level. It is brutal, and because that's what I'm gonna do to someone who messes with me. Because I can't be kind. I will do my best with verbal jiu-jitsu to de-escalate the situation. But when words fail, because words will fail, words have failed, right? What do you do?
Yeah, so it's like I look at it. Chances are most of us will go through life without ever having a situation where our life is threatened or we're in a really survival situation. But I look at it like swimming. If you learn how to swim and you practice to swim, you learn a breaststroke and all the different side stroke and backstroke and everything like that, you maintain your level of swimming. You'll probably never go through your entire life without a situation where you have to be a strong swimmer so you don't drown. But what happens if you do? What happens if you do?
Okay.
If you're not a strong swimmer, you're not going to survive. Well, it's kind of the same thing. Like, people, hey, Mark, did you ever use boxing in the street? No, never once, not once. Been boxing for a long time, never used it on the street. However, I'm sure I would. It just hasn't presented itself. I will say this, two types of violence. One is social violence, which is mostly a male thing, can be female, it's primarily male. It's ego-driven. Social violence is we bump, we're in a nightclub or a bar, or you're looking at me, and I said, what are you looking at? So that's social violence. That's to be totally avoided. Very difficult for men because we have ego. Really hard to do. Imagine you're walking down the street and someone says something about your mother, your girlfriend, your wife, your child. You're going to want to rip their heart out. Can't do it.
Yeah.
You just, it's to be avoided, that confrontation. However, if that same dude comes up behind you and sticks a knife in your back and you got your wife and your kids, or even if you're alone, then antisocial violence, you've got to do what you've got to do. You got to rip that guy's eyes out. So that's a delineation I think it's very important for people to understand here.
It's a tough situation to try to decide what's the best situation. There's some guys who are quick to go, I'm gonna fight. But the problem is, unless if you don't do so regularly, maybe you might get lucky. But for the most part, people who train usually stay out of that situation, right? like us. And in regarding to your um, what you're saying about not using boxing, in the streets, you probably have, and you just don't realize. Because the way I look at it is martial arts, like it literally saved my life on several occasions,
Mhm.
right? You know, it, martial arts saved my life on several occasions in regards to like nearly getting into an accident. Yes, Mark, I'm talking about mine, right? You know, the couple times I almost crashed driving my car, skid out. Tires not the best, but not balding yet on a slightly wet surface. Somehow, and Saban, he's my best friend. He was with me for the ride, and he was there. We come around the bend after that rain, car kept sliding. Somehow, I managed to control the car. First time ever, mind you. I'm barely 20. Actually, I was 19 at the time. All right, and I was able to maintain the control of the car without spinning out of control and rolling or crashing into anybody else. And this happened on a couple of other instances too. Just driving back down from Sterling Forest late at night situation, trying to get home. You know, avoiding an accident, have to avoid it, control it, right? Uh, you know, coming down.
So I think the bottom line, and we'll wrap it up because I know you got to get back to teaching, but I think the takeaway from today is this, that there does seem to be a little bit of negativity throughout, I don't know, just the YouTube world about, everybody has a different opinion of which martial art is better, the, BJJ guys or Muay Thai, or I think the really top level guys don't think there's is the end all, because we all understand there's different types of battle. There's ground fighting, there's stand up fighting, there's weapons. But the point is that we still have to understand there's a delineation between, or I shouldn't say delineation, there's a reason we do the martial arts. And it's not in people's minds to think, oh, he's a black belt, he's going to do 17 moves in a row on this guy and tie him up in a knot. No. When somebody's coming at you looking to take your life, an arm bar is not going to work. You got to make them unconscious. So it's a different mindset.
So here's the thing, right? Unless you're doing sport, BJJ or wrestling, right? For the most part, which you can in an engagement grab and grapple and then get into something. But most average grappling dealing with someone, unless you are put into the situation where you're now going to tackle somebody, right? Um, Most grabbing in a situation can't happen unless there's some kind of
Attachment,
action, striking. You got damaging command center and such. No one can just give you their hand to grab, do an arm bar or whatever.
Yeah, you have to have an entry. No one's going to stick their arm out and just say, "Here, grab my arm."
So with that said, there are a lot of arts which I'll never like. A lot of people who get, especially nowadays, going all on and on raving about MMA or Krav Maga or whatever else, and they want to talk about, oh, this won't work in the street, that won't work in the street. Like, people have never been in a situation. People who are armchair quarterbacks or armchair coaches on UFC fight night, they act like they know what they're talking about. Never been in a fight. Never. The last time they did a karate class was when you were 5 and you're 50. No, the reality is, you don't know what the hell you're freaking talking about. Shut that up.
So here's the final thought is, if you're considering a martial art and you're confused as to which direction to go, any of them are good. Any of them are good.
You just
make sure that you've done your research on the school, on the instructor, what their history is. I did my research on Nomad and on you, and it turned out to be amazing. Just make sure you don't align yourself with that old guy, Master Fu Ling Yu.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, great talk. I know you got to get back to teaching. Any final thoughts, Guru?
Yeah, don't listen to the fluff from people, right? Someone says, don't do Aikido, it'll never work. Don't do Jiu-Jitsu, it won't
All
work.
works.
Do Judo, will never work. Don't do boxing, it'll never work. Why would you want to do boxing? You're not going to walk around with boxing gloves all the time, right? Oh, don't do Kali, because you're not going to walk around with a stick in your hand all the time, right? Even though we do carry things on us, right? Simple pen could be useful. Don't need a stick. This is my stick, right? Don't do this. Don't do that. It'll never work in the street. No, you can't say that, because the reality is, every martial art, to some degree, going to have a lot of crossover in techniques.
Yep.
Because it's all based on how the human body moves. Our body moves only so many ways unless you have a particular situation, or you're at least less flexible than some, more flexible than others, big or small. But ultimately, we all generally move the same way. And they're straight, a punch is a punch, kick is a kick, elbow's an elbow, knee's a knee, right? Headbutt's a headbutt. Guess what? Learn how to use it all.
Yep. Great point. And one last time, learn a lot, use little, guys.
Yep.
Stay safe out there. Make sure you're getting your workouts in. Make sure you're eating right. Stay healthy. Stay strong. And align yourself with great people like Royce, and you're going to be in a much better place. All right, gang. Have a great week. We'll see you all next week.
Take care, everybody. Stay safe and healthy.